when all the excellencies, ambassadors, and really important people were so good-humored about the technical, their connections were wavering, they went in and out. Okay. So, well, hello everyone, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I'm Kusumita Peterson, and it's my honor to be the moderator today. I'm a board member of the Parliament of the World's Religions. We are very strong supporters of the Faith for Earth initiative and worked with Dr. Iyad Abu Mokli since 2018. And I'm in New York City on the traditional territories of the Lenape people in the borough of Queens, which is very ethnically diverse. And I'm a founding member of the Climate Action Task Force of the Parliament. So today we're going to discuss ethics and values and environmental governance. And we have 90 minutes and minus now 5 minutes. And so let me speak for just a moment about our process. I'm going to ask each presenter to engage 3 questions. And the order of the presenters I will tell in a moment, but here are the 3 questions. From the perspective of your own faith or spiritual tradition, what are the main or the core ethical points or moral norms that should guide our relations, human relations with the natural world? In other words, environmental ethics, as it's sometimes called. Second question, what are the main programs, activities, and initiatives of your organization that are based on these values? And Namaste and Hari Bol, Gauranga Das has just joined us. It should be evening in India. And third question is, how do you believe this approach, your own organization individually and also in partnership with others, with other faith-based organizations, can contribute, and let's not limit it, in partnership with other organizations, could contribute to environmental governance? And the order of speakers is Professor Kameri Bote, and she is could serve as, she's an expert on environmental governance. So we need her to go first as, in a sense, a kind of a keynote. Then Mona Palaka, Bishop Schirmacher, Kekatan Bashu, Rabbi Daniel Schwartz, Priestess Beatrice Schultes, Usme Ahmad, and Arthur Dahl. And so without further ado, I think we should just begin. And if we had the full 90 minutes, each speaker could have maybe, I think we tried to take 5 to 7 minutes. And since we can't do what we do in academic life, which is hand you a little note, because we're all, separate, I am going to ask you to wind up, if you have not done so, when you're a minute out from 7 minutes. Thank you for understanding. So without further ado, I think the Asmira, are you able to post the bios in the chat for everyone, please?
Yeah.
Will it be possible? So I'm going to call on Professor Kameri Bote, and she is an expert on law for UN Environment Program and a professor of which university? Name your university.
My university is, I've been teaching at the University of Nairobi, but I'm currently the director of the law division at the United Nations Environment Program.
Yes, please speak to us, and we're eager to hear your words.
Okay. Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here today to speak about faith, values, and ethics. And I think there are three issues here. One is the relevance of the faith based organizations in environmental governance. The second issue is how ethics, values, and religion contribute to the work of UNEP. And the third is how faith, values, and religions can be institutionalized by member states to address issues related to the United Nations Environment Assembly. With regard to the relevance of faith based organizations, in today's world, faith, values, and ethics are put out singly or together as providing the answer to different problems that the world faces. And it is not surprising that they have also been considered in the area of the environment. And given the gravity of the challenges that we face in the environment, the need for different norms, actors, and structures deal with those problems is ever too urgent and immediate. And the contributions of all sectors of societies and all levels of governance is needed to deal with these problems we face. And therefore, faith, values, and ethics have been woven into the mosaic of environmental governance. And when we look at faith-based organizations, they can play a very important role in local, national, and global environmental governance because they have a lot of social influence in their communities. In fact, all faiths have teachings and messages directly or indirectly linked to the environment, and many explore the relationship between people and the environment. And this is really the embryo with environmental governance and humanity's role in protecting nature can be addressed. While religions may not always provide specific instructions on environmental governance, there are strong ethics of environmental care. And they have teachings, practices of what is good or bad, virtues, which comprise norms that reflect moral values about the way humans should behave towards nature, its resources, and other living beings. And all these are important elements in environmental governance. Additionally, religious teachings relate to all areas of life and are therefore compatible with the holistic perspectives that are required to engage in effective environmental governance. So, despite the great diversity of religions and faith traditions, there are three things that all of them have. One is that they explore the relationship between humans and the natural environment. Two is that they contain ethical mandates concerning this relationship. And three, they recognize that human well being is intrinsically related to the environment. And these common factors exist across faith traditions despite different understandings of the role of humans in the world. Indeed, faith-based organizations have engaged in the conservation of the environment for decades at global, regional, and local levels and on different things: climate change, energy conservation, biodiversity conservation, reforestation, among others. And therefore, in faith-based organizations, we have strong foundations which we can build on to ensure greater faith engagement in environmental governance. The faith-based organizations can mobilize their adherents to be involved in environmental governance processes at all levels and at different scales, given their immense outreach capabilities, diverse avenues of communications. In fact, religious groups represent an important voting bloc as well. And because environmental governance is really crafted by people who are elected, faith-based organizations can actually control voting blocks and get them to prioritize environmental challenges and work towards improved environmental governance. And that, I think, is what within UNEP we've seen in the Faith for Earth initiative, which is at the nexus of international environmental law and environmental governance as a cornerstone of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. So, how can ethics, values, and religion contribute to the work of UNEP? I think one, we look at the different problems we have, whether they are pollution, nature loss, or climate crisis. They are rooted in a complex web of economic, social, and cultural factors, as well as belief systems, social attitudes, and perceptions. And these can actually be impacted on by the faith, ethics, and values. And when we try to deal with the problems, inquiries into values, beliefs, and ethics that drive human beings and their relationship with the environment is critical. And these can be found in a lot of the faiths. And for many people, these values and ethics are inspired by their faith. And I'd like to tell Dr. Iad that, people don't quarrel with their faith. So if they believe that harming the environment is not good, then they are going to live by that, and there cannot be a stronger drive towards environmental sustainability. So religious beliefs and practices, which have existed for long, can actually be the bedrock for environmental governance for different communities and different world religions, because they balance the values that people have, and you're looking at what you believe in and what the needs you have. And faith can actually play a very important role in inspiring behavioral and lifestyle changes towards sustainable development. I think I've already said that faith organizations have many networks. In certain faiths, you have one message preached the whole world over on any day that the faithful meet. So,
Yes,
how?
Professor, we need to wind up in a few seconds.
Yes, I'm winding up. How
Okay.
how can faith, values, and religions be institutionalized by member states? I think for us, with the Faith for Us initiative, we've seen the engagement of faith within the environmental governance at an international level, and even the engagement of state parties in promoting this through the governance of the United Nations Environment Program. So I'd like to stop there, and then maybe we can talk a little bit later.
Thank you so much for that incredibly informative presentation. And that gives us all a frame of reference for our dialogue going forward today. And our next presenter will be Mona Polaka. And we're very honored to have Mona, who is a traditional elder from what in the United States is called the state of Arizona, in the southwest of North America, Turtle Island. And she is a member of the International Council of the 13 Grandmothers. She's an elder, and Mona, forgive me if I get this, in the Havapusai and Hopi people. She's an expert on water issues as well as other issues, and she is an original caretaker fellow at the Center for Earth Ethics at Union Theological Seminary. Mona, please share your wisdom with us. And as time is marching on, please take 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to greet each and every one of you, and uh, also to acknowledge this good day that we're in, and give thanks to the good Creator for all the blessings of our life-giving elements: the water, the air, the fire, the earth, I'm speaking to you here at this time from southern Arizona in the United States, on the traditional land and territory of the Thana O'odham Nation. And I am of the Havasupai, the people of the blue-green water from down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon in Arizona, as well as on my father's side, I come from the Hopi, the people of peace, and the Tewa people, our warriors. And I'm grateful to be here and join such a distinguished group of panelists. Uh, I was thinking about this, the UN UN environmental program, and what a uh, what a huge responsibility, a huge responsibility that has a um, the job to take into consideration uh, the protection, preservation of the basis of our life, the basis of the foundations of life. Environment. Our environment is like the womb of our mother. We lived inside water. We breathe this air. We rely on the sun. We live off of Mother Earth. That's a huge responsibility um, that is before us. And it's good that we're able to take time out and have a voice representing the various faith-based organizations to have a say in how are we going to continue to put our minds together, our hearts, our faith, our beliefs, put that together so that we can make sure that we are preserving life on Mother Earth, not only for ourselves today, but also for our children and our grandchildren and the coming generations, the ones we will not see. That is our responsibility now. And in the indigenous ways of being, we have what we call the original instructions. And those original instructions are what has been passed down from time immemorial. Unlike many of the world's religions, we do not have uh, scriptures that are in print. We have relied on our oral traditions in passing this knowledge, this wisdom down through the generations. And we continue to uphold that. I'm glad to say that the indigenous people have stepped forward and have approached the United Nations. The United Nations have been called upon by the indigenous people to acknowledge that we, as a collective of the human five-fingered people, that we must acknowledge and honor our foundations of life in order for us to continue to receive all of this goodness that gives us life, physical, spiritual, emotional, mental well-being. And so as the indigenous people have been coming forward and bringing this to the indigenous people, as well as to the world, it's it's a wonderful time, a wonderful moment to see that there are efforts being taken to step forward and to consider the ways of strengthening our understanding as human beings in order for us to improve the quality of life, improve our way of conducting ourselves in relation to our sacred environment. And so I'm grateful that I could be able to speak with you. We have, in the organizations I represent, we have been making calls to bring voice to the indigenous people, the ones who have the lived experience, that live in the places where the sources are continuing to be maintained in their most natural state. The people of the indigenous people have attempted to maintain that delicate balance within their lands and territories. And so if you look at the earth, you will find that it is on the lands and of the indigenous people that you will see that we have maintained our lands in the most natural state. And the teaching that we have in doing that is you take only what you need and you leave some for the rest.
Mona,
These are some of our principles and values of life on this Mother Earth as being the human beings and in relationship to all other living entities. Thank you for hearing me. Blessings to all of you.
thank you so much, Mona, for its profound testimony. And we want to hear more from you during the questions and answers. And now it's my honor to call on Archbishop Thomas Schirmacher, and he is the Secretary General of the World Evangelical Alliance, and which represents 143 national evangelical alliances with 600 million members. It's an enormous constituency, and he is co-president of Religions for Peace. And so we ask Archbishop Schirmacher to speak to us, and please, and I think Archbishop, it's good to just remind of the three questions that we had. What are the core values or moral norms, ethical values of your faith that bear on our relation to the natural world? How do these mold or serve as a foundation for your organization's work? And how is that a contribution to environmental governance? And so please speak to us. Thank you. You're muted, Archbishop.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor if I see who is listening. That I don't have such an honored audience every day. Even so, in this week and the next week to come, when I will be in Nairobi, one gets used to it. And I'm glad that it's the brightest guys who help us to preserve our common home, this world, the earth. If we talk about values, I like to be upfront, especially if I only have some minutes. So let's go back some decades ago when the UN mainly understood itself as being states cooperating with each other. What was so difficult at that time for religions to cooperate with the UN? And I'm talking for both. It's somehow by coincidence or planned, I don't know, that we just heard indigenous religion that is fixed to a very specific part of the world. And I'm speaking now on behalf of a global movement. We have churches in every country, and that includes also, let's say, a lot of churches in the rainforest, in Papua New Guinea, in Brazil. It's two things. Number one, a lot of religious people felt they first have to buy into another worldview. This worldview could be very secular, but it also could have been secretly another religion. And even if it was Christian, not all Christians agree. It could be that it was felt a specific group of Christians happened to be working there and putting things into it. So there was the impression the agenda is driven by other worldviews. You have to buy into them, and then you can cooperate. And I think the UN changing over, going for all the actors, and you know that the environment was the area that was the first one that really reached out to the different religions and started to include it, and then we got Face for Earth. This changes this whole thing. Now we do not come in, have to buy into the values and worldviews of someone else, but we come with our values on the table. We have a dialogue, we discuss, and then we find out in how far we can put those together. And of course, one of the values that we all share is that this planet, that this earth is something that has been given to us, that we do not own, but it has been given to us. And we are responsible what happens to it in the future. And that means it has been given to us all, and that also means it has not been given to a specific group or a specific religion. It has been given to all of us. With Face for Earth and with the whole UNEP, UNEA programs, it's possible now to share our values with the whole group. Now, where do our values start? Number one, I already said it, we inherited is from our older brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith, the first chapter of the Bible, where man is created with all his intelligence, all his ability to work, to change things, and to preserve the world. So that's part of the DNA of human beings, that they are responsible for the world. Let me say it very simple. This world has not been handed over to the tigers, I don't know, to the frogs. They are part of the big family of God's creation, but we have been made responsible. We have been created with all our intelligence, with the ability to discuss each other, to counsel, and to seek new ways. So that's a very central value, I think. A second very important value in the Christian faith is rarely spoken about. This is our relation to the state. On the one side, Christianity has a very positive relation to the state because it believes that the state as such, the existence of a state, the need of the state, has been created by God. Yeah? So the state is not something pushed on people. That does not say that a specific state cannot be very evil. Yeah, and in Christianity we have this insider language, Romans 13. That is the famous chapter where Paul says, "Follow those who are ruling." And then we have the last book of the Revelation, chapter 13, where we speak about the so-called anti-Christian state. That is a state that puts everything upside down and instead of preserving life, kills people and so on. Yeah, and this is very important for what we do here. A cooperation between faith and the UN, which is all the nations or the states piled on each other. Yeah, I think that's a value that is very important for us, that we are not just talking to the UN and to the states because they happen to have the power or the money, but we believe that part of the responsibility for the future of this world has been handed over for the state, that of course in its best version is voted in by the people itself and represents the ideas and thoughts of the people. But I think that's a value. We have to see this. It's a
Yes,
value in itself. Yeah. And
wind up, please. Thank you.
yeah. Okay, then we leave it with those two values. Responsibility for this world. We do not own it, but it has been given to it. And even so, we can be critical of what specific states do in principle. Without the state involved and without the dialogue with the states, we cannot think about the future of this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Archbishop, for that candid and also very finely nuanced, theologically nuanced presentation. And now I'm very happy to call on our next speaker, who is Kekashan Basu. And although at a tender age, she's still a university student. She is the founder and president of the Green Hope Foundation. And it's doing remarkable development work and work for environmental justice all over the world. And she is a Bengali of Indian background, but lives in Toronto. And we're very proud that she is part of the board of the Parliament of Religions and our Climate Action Task Force. And in view of the three questions, Kekashan, I know you are personally practicing in the Hindu tradition, but Green Hope Foundation is an interfaith organization. If that, and I just wanted to lift that up. And now, please, we're very eager to learn from you.
Thank you so much, Kusumita, and hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with all of you today. I am speaking to you from Toronto, Canada, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Now, I began my advocacy at the age of 7 years old. As Susumita mentioned, I am a practicing Hindu, and I have been raised with the understanding through my faith that every action that I take to protect the environment, our planet, and my fellow human being is an act of dharma. One of our Hindu holy books, the Upanishads, narrates that after creating the universe, the creator entered into each and every object to help them maintain their interrelationships. So that is why, by contributing toward the maintenance of this interrelationship, one worships God. And that was how I understood that it was my moral duty as a responsible human being, as a responsible citizen of this planet, to ensure that I did my very best to create a just, equitable, and sustainable world for all. Now, I planted my first tree on my 8th birthday, which is also World Environment Day, 5th June. And that was also one of the other indications that it was my life's mission to become an eco warrior. A few years after that, at the age of 12, I founded Green Hope Foundation. And one of the teachings that really stuck with me throughout this journey is what Swami Vivekananda had once said, that the more we come out and do good to others, the more our hearts will be purified and God will be in them. So this essentially has been our mantra at Green Hope Foundation, and also what my journey of change making since I began this journey as a 7-year-old. So my grassroots work has taken me to communities and regions that are invisible to most in the developed world, where communities are still steeped in unimaginable poverty, in superstition, exploitation, where human life, and especially those of their women and children, are almost worth nothing. And working within these communities, be it in the Syrian refugee camps on the Lebanon-Syria border, the world's largest refugee camp that was once in the news but now is largely forgotten, that even today is home to over 1 million Rohingya refugees, or amongst the vast rural communities in the global south that have been hardest hit by COVID-19. My lived experiences have given me a unique perspective of human endurance, diversity, as well as the potential that exists to bring about a new world order through sustainable development. And the two main issues that my work addresses are the lack of inclusivity and the low level of awareness amongst young people, particularly where they form a major part, particularly in areas where they form a major part of the population. And we use education for sustainable development as this transformative tool to engage people in the implementation of the sustainable development goals. And just in terms of numbers, our environmental actions and empowerment has resulted in the planting of over 7,200,000 trees and over 7,500 mangroves. We've conducted over 800 cleanups. Our education programs have directly empowered over 225,000 people across 26 countries. Now, it was mentioned that Green Hope Foundation is an interfaith organization, and we work globally in both rural and urban settings, in developed nations and in regions of the global south. So, this broad spectrum of our engagement has given us the exposure to really imbibe this wide range of cultures that's also taught us the importance of developing solutions from within these communities. And it's in this context that our interfaith approach has proven so effective, and especially in the rural communities where faith and tradition significantly influence behaviors. So, by working in tandem with the local faith leaders, we're able to positively bring apprehensive of what they call outside influences. And often they are not wrong. So, one of our projects in Bangladesh is building resilience amongst communities that are impacted by COVID-19. And these villages have no electricity, they suffer from water insecurity and a lack of jobs and a very, very high rate of child marriages. So we began by building a relationship of trust with the village madrasa, explaining the benefits of our projects that sought to provide vocational education to youth and women, reduce water insecurity, and provide green jobs. So, with this wholesome support from the elders of the madrasa, we installed solar grids that now power not only the madrasa, but also a climate smart agricultural model and a sewing center for women that's turned them into entrepreneurs. We have a solar powered mobile library that takes books to the doorstep of children every week who've been forced to drop out of school. So, at every new installation, the religious head of the village gathers everyone for a prayer, calling for its success so that it leads them out of suffering. So, similarly, in Kenya, we work with the local church in villages, supporting their orphanages with environmental learning programs and workshops. And we even follow the same working model in modern cities as well. In Toronto, we partner with the Toronto Catholic District School Board, organizing sustainability conferences for their students, setting out on field trips where they plant trees, clean ravines and lakes, protecting the habitats of endangered species such as Ontario's wood turtles that are now endangered as a consequence of urbanization. So faith teaches us, in conclusion, faith teaches us to care for creation as a common denominator of all our actions. And at the end of the day, it's this mantra that drives us at Green Hope Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaikar-san. That was just an amazingly eloquent and informative presentation. And we're actually doing, we still have more than 45 minutes officially for our program. So we're not doing too badly for time. And it's a joy for me to call next on Rabbi Daniel Schwartz. And he is the executive director of a historic and pioneering Jewish environmental organization, the Coalition on the Environment and Jewish Life, known as COJL. It was formed in the early 1990s as a partner in the National Religious Partnership on the Environment, which was a really a groundbreaking initiative here in the United States on religion and the environment. And he's also a congregational rabbi in Pennsylvania, I believe. and he has worked with the Reform Action Center, Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. So he's a key leader. There are many in the Jewish community on the environment, Rabbi Daniel. And also he's a comparative theologian of the environment. You know, he speaks about the Pope's encyclical. He has been working with the Vatican on their faith-based environmental initiatives. Please speak to us, Rabbi Daniel.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to start with an exercise. It's more effective when we're in a room together and can see each other, but you'll just have to imagine a little bit. And that is, I want to have everybody take a moment to close your eyes and picture the first image that comes to mind when you hear the word environment. Get that image firmly in mind, and now open your eyes and raise your hand if there are any people in that picture. And one of the things that happens when I do this exercise, as I've done many, many times, is that very few people raise their hands. We have this false image that the environment is something out there, something separate from us, whales and wilderness or parks and pandas, whereas environment in reality is where we are. It's where we live and grow, study, learn, play, work, and pray. And if we don't understand that connection, we're not going to make progress in applying our values to our relationships with other people and with the environment more broadly. In my tradition, I would say that there are 5 values that I want to highlight quickly, but the overarching value in Judaism, as in many religious traditions, is that our internal values and beliefs don't really matter unless we act on them. This idea of applied ethics in a legal or quasi-legal framework is really important. If we hold values and don't live them, then their importance is very limited. These are values that many faith traditions have articulated. Archbishop Thomas and I were part of a really lovely program that the Vatican played a key role in October, of bringing together 40 diverse religious leaders from around the globe to speak on these values before COP26. Among the values that we share is a connection to what we might call solidarity, how we are all interrelated, but which I prefer to call love. The love may seem like a very light and airy subject in today's world, but it is, I think, the only thing strong enough to counter the kind of raw geopolitical calculations that we see bringing destruction to so much of the world at this very moment, and with violence. Solidarity and love help us understand that we need to provide a world that is just and fair to each other. Climate change is unjust across multiple dimensions, whether that is between nations, oppressed minorities, and unempowered groups within nations, and between generations. Another key value is the idea of preventing harm rather than ameliorating it once it has occurred. Sometimes today this is called the precautionary principle. In Judaism, we have a principle based on a biblical teaching about the parapet, the idea that you place a guard rail or guard wall around a flat roof to keep people from falling off, rather than building in ways of picking them up after they've fallen off. And similarly, we are taught that value means that we are to prevent harm more generally. In addition to these values that are a little easier to think about their application, there is an overarching value that I would call hope. We live in a time of despair, of division, of conflict, and it is hard to see our way to the other side. But one thing that religious traditions have been expert at for thousands of years is imagining hope, being able to believe that things can and should, and perhaps if we work together, will be different. The ability to, even in the midst of drought and famine, to realize that this world we have been given is, in essence, a garden that we must pass on to future generations. And we need to live out that hope and that message of hope for all generations present on the earth today and for future generations to come. This is the work that Kojal has been trying to do in partnership with different faiths in the United States and across the globe. And we are working together with a project called Sacred Season or Exodus Alliance, remarking on the remarkable intersection of faith traditions this coming April, where we have major Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Baha'i festivals all intersecting in a short period of time in April, and trying to use that intersection as a way of speaking to our obligations to each other and to the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel, and for that very, very rich and also succinct presentation. And now I am wondering if Beatrice Schultes has joined this gathering. I think not. And therefore, it's a delight for me to call on Gauranga Das. And he is the director of a remarkable community, the Govardhan Eco Village, which is in Maharashtra, India, about a 3-hour drive north of Mumbai. I have been there. It is a community and a program of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, and founded with the inspiration of one of their outstanding spiritual leaders, Radhanath Swami. It's one of a number of eco villages of ISKCON, also known as the Hare Krishna movement. And well, there's so much to tell about their programs, but Gauranga Das is not a newcomer to the Faith for Earth program. He has participated in the Faith for Earth dialogue in Nairobi and is a pillar of the faith-based environmental movement more generally. So, Gauranga Das, first, if you could speak about the core values of your tradition, the ancient Vaishnava tradition stemming from Sri Krishna and Rama in the Hindu tradition, and then the programs of the Govardhan Eco Village. And I think we're going to have ample time for discussion, and we're going to need to engage environmental governance a bit more in our open discussion. Thank you. Gauranga Das, please speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Peterson. And I'm very honored to be here on the invite of Dr. Iyad. The ever-increasing emission of greenhouse gases, which is having a far-reaching impact on the planet. And it's going to rise the temperatures all over the world by 2.4 degrees centigrade. And because of the impact of this global warming, the glaciers and the polar ice is melting at rates which are 2 to 3 times higher in comparison to the last century. And the Earth is also going through such a huge biodiversity loss, and this is going to be almost unpredictable. So the problems of the earth, water, land, etc. is such that climate change requires change at every level. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhumir apo analo vayu kham mano buddhire vacha ahankar itiyamme bhinna prakritir ashtada. In our Vaishnava tradition of Hinduism, it is described that nature is considered to be like a mother. So, environmental crisis will only be solved when we deal and treat our mother with empathy, with concern, with care. And that depends on changing and transforming human behavior. So, therefore, just like a baby is cared for and nourished by the mother, nature is nourishing us, taking care of us. And as the child grows to adulthood, the awareness develops, and one tries to make an effort to help others too, in line with ethical principles. And therefore, living by moral principles is just like following the traffic laws for smooth travel on a road. The purpose of travel is to reach the destination. But if the traveler feels that the traffic laws are delaying my, reaching my destination, it's an obstruction, then he may start breaking the traffic laws and he feels he can get away with it. So people give up the morality when circumstances threaten them, circumstances tempt them. But the modern society, which is completely overwhelmed by consumerism, may encourage and necessitate immoral behavior. But when people are surrounded by such allurements, that being moral, they may think that we only stand to lose and nothing much tangible to gain. So, to reciprocate with Mother Nature, there is ongoing implementation of reduce, reuse, recycle, but they're not going to be enough because instant gratification appears to be irresistible. So, therefore, because humankind is not recycling as much as we should, so one of the most important resources we are losing is rainforests. And the rainforests we are losing at the rate of almost 100 acres every minute. We lose almost 150,000 acres every single day, almost 50 million acres every single year. So people need inspiration to make the 3 R's realizable. For this, we need another R, and that is raise. And what is that raise means? Reduce, reuse, recycle, and raise our consciousness by teaching the goal of social transactions and life itself. And therefore, I say that spirituality is not different from healthcare. Healthcare deals with transformation of the body, and spirituality deals with transformation of the consciousness and raising the consciousness. And therefore, by raising the consciousness, you will be in harmony with nature. Nature will also respond by creating harmonious conditions. And in this way, we will actually be able to support each other best. At Govardhan Eco Village, we created vibrant systems for education and community. And we have sustainability as a way of life. W for wisdom, A for Ayurveda, Y for yoga. And we are teaching people at all levels. Our rural development program is spread over 5 major components: farmer development, women empowerment, education, healthcare, and livelihood creation. We have mobilized local communities, empowered them with knowledge. 78 tribal villages are rising above poverty line, and this includes more than 16,000 tribal villagers who have been taught irrigation and organic farming practices. We have created seed banks, water resource development for both drinking and irrigation. And the rural development program is supporting people at all levels. At the Govardhan Eco Village campus itself, which is the hub, the model incorporates organic farming, animal care, green building, water conservation, alternative energy, soil biotechnology, prevention as a way of life, and rural development program. And therefore, we have created a rural circular economy which maximizes synergies and minimizes trade-offs in achieving sustainable development goals. So we are trying to bridge science and Vedic knowledge in a unique way. And as Dr. Rajendra Singh, my good friend, the waterman of India, says, when he sees Govardhan village, he thinks about a climate change adaptation from a Vedic perspective. And therefore, we are very honored to be accredited to United Nations through various agencies. And we have hosted several circular economy conferences in the past, including Nexus and GFESH and Artha Forum and various others. What are some of the greatest opportunities for faith organizations in creating attitude change? The ecological problem is just becoming worse. Governments have to make and implement measures. At the same time, the faith organizations have a major role to play, because when the policies are made, till the consciousness within transforms, people are not willing to follow those policies. So therefore, education comes from the Latin word educare, which means to create transformation from within. So therefore, we have to inspire citizens, communities, companies, and countries to come together. And then the Agenda 2030 will actually be achieved. So first, at the citizens and communities level, they should be inspired to make the right choices in the food we eat, minimizing loss of food and wastage, moving to more plant-based diet, and converting biodegradable waste into useful soil fertilizers, as we have done at the Eco Village through soil biotechnology. What we choose to buy, culture of using disposables, we have to move away from them. We have to buy products which will last longer. We have to go away from the trending culture. Traveling using public transportation, car sharing, ride pooling, etc. How we spend our money investing in socially and responsible actions, investing in making our homes more energy efficient. Initiatives we associate with promoting conscious consumption, handholding the early bird, such as peer-to-peer learning, facilitate and empower behavior change in children. Then thirdly is the companies. Transformation will have to take place at a large scale at the level of companies. Companies must contribute to sustainable development. They should not just be profit driven. And therefore, optimizing supply chains to reduce greenhouse gas emissions rely on cleaner resources, energy to power facilities. And lastly, countries must realize that environmental issues and the impacts are not limited within a country's border. And as we see the butterfly effect, it can actually affect everywhere through deterministic chaos. Countries act on the global scale have potential to give encouragement to citizens, communities, and companies to adopt a sustainable lifestyle. In conclusion, the faith-based organizations have great resource at the disposal, people. So let us help transform people's consciousness, rise them so that from the airplane above, they can actually see the holistic picture and make the right decisions to make the transformation as we have done at the Govardhan Eco Village. Thanks once again to UNEP for inviting me for this.
Thank you so much, Rangadas. Now we have two more speakers, and these are Dr. Husma Ahmed. I will be brief in introducing you, and Daniel Perel. And I'm going to ask you to speak for about 6 minutes. And first, Dr. Husna Ahmed, she is the CEO of Global One organization. She's also the co-chair of the Multi-Faith Advisory Council of the Interagency Task Force on Religion and Development at United Nations. And she is active in many organizations. So I'm going to say no more, but call on her to speak to us from an Islamic perspective and from her practices. So, Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you so much, Kasmita. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. And as today's Friday, Jummah Mubarak. I'm really delighted to be here with all of you today, especially as I see in the participants lots of old friends and new friends as well. So thank you for the contributions. I particularly resounded with Rabbi Daniel's talk about love, and I think that was a wonderful thing to say. In terms of practical examples of how to instill ethics into environmental projects, I think what is clear is that if we truly take up the baton and push to accomplish the SDGs by 2030, then we can align ethics and environment. What's important is that everyone gets involved in pushing for the achievement of the SDGs. You're all aware of the history of colonialism and the Industrial Revolution. The injustices of that period of history are still apparent today. We need to ensure that in the name of the environmental mitigation, the same powers don't try to take advantage of the southern nations again. We need to push for adaptation based on cooperation and local knowledge. For example, my organization, Global One, it's a unique Muslim women-led international NGO with a focus on WASH, water, sanitation, hygiene, Islamic farming, and global health. We believe very much in faith action to find sustainable local solutions. Our projects in Kenya, Somalia, Nigeria, Jordan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh are taking a holistic approach which combines resources, training, and infrastructure. Now more than ever, we need to create ethical models of sustained growth, which encompasses all the great faith traditions and yet bring balance to the planet. As a women's INGO, we're very conscious of the support that our sisters, mothers, and daughters need to survive each day, especially when they're refugees, widows, or new mothers. We look at sustainable projects through a gender lens. We have developed manuals on public health and Islam, and a menstrual hygiene management and Islam toolkit, and an Islamic farming toolkit, in which we use teachings to encourage treatment of the land with due respect and preservation. Through Islamic farming practices on our farms mean that we make the land sustainable and it can produce tayyib food, which can feed our populations. In a wholesome farming system, agricultural practices work in harmony with nature. We must look at it holistically and look at all the elements, which include soil, nutrition, food, and water. Clean energy, which is cheap and easy to access, is another way to help women who have to walk many miles just for clean water. Promoting solar energy in Africa has really helped our projects to succeed, including our Islamic farm in Nigeria and Kenya. So for me, ethics is about moving away from greed and self-interest. But the irony of it is that we're facing the greatest catastrophe today, climate change, because of a lack of ethical behavior. Our Prophet Muhammad stated, whoever believes in God and the final day should not trouble his neighbors. We've abandoned our neighbors. We've become selfish and thoughtless and just focused on ourselves. And I think with the COVID pandemic, it's just been clear, so clear, that if we don't care about our neighbors, it will come back to bite us. So after the Prophet, after describing the rights of the neighbors, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have stated, listen to what I tell you. Only a few people who are blessed by God's mercy fulfill the rights of neighbors. God enjoined me the right of the neighbor to the extent that I thought he would appoint him as an heir. Now, did you know that Muslim majority countries are disproportionately affected by climate change, and yet they've been among the lowest contributors to global greenhouse gas emissions? With more than 50 independent Muslim countries and a worldwide population of nearly 2 billion Muslims, the effects of environmental degradation and climate change are already adversely affecting the Muslim communities. There's still, however, insufficient awareness and action in the Muslim communities on the environmental agenda, despite Islam clearly promoting the duties of Muslims to protect and conserve the environment. As a Muslim, I'm taught that humans are stewards of this planet. It's a trust given to us by Allah, and we have the responsibility of preserving the natural order on earth and maintaining its balance, and must strive to ensure the fair allocation of resources. I believe the Muslim communities all over the world can approach the mission of the According to Islam, humans are the caretakers and stewards of God's earth and creation. And in Quran 2:30, it says, be like the honey. Anything it eats is clean, anything it drops is sweet, and the branches it sits upon does not break. That's Imam Ali, as-salam. And in the Quran it says, as 2:30, as I mentioned, is, I am going to place in the earth a Khalifa, a steward. Now, the importance of walking gently on the earth, this means leading a lifestyle that is in harmony with the planet and not against it, as is prescribed by Islam. So, just like the honeybee, we should be climate conscious in all that we do, taking heed to not harm our beautiful planet. All animals are not, and not only human beings, are also a vital part of God's creation.
We to wind up as soon as you have time.
So this trust includes the responsibility for the custody of the environment. The Quran itself mentions the environment over 700 times, and Muslim environmentalists draw upon the Quran and Sunnah to generate environmental principles from them, thereby creating ecological interpretations of Islam and a set of Islamic environmental ethics. The principles of Tawheed, the oneness of God, and Khalifa, stewardship, mizan, balance, and the principle of maslaha, which is public interest. So I just want to end with a saying of Ibn Kathir, who says that the mu'min are the people who have been prevented through the Quran from indulging in the pleasures of this world. It comes between them and what might destroy them. The mu'min is like a prisoner in this world who tries to free himself from its shackles and chains, placing his trust in nothing in it until the day he meets his creator. He knows full well that he is accountable for everything that he hears, sees, and says, and for everything that he does with his body. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for that brilliant presentation, and brilliant and comprehensive. And let's move on right away to our final speaker, who is my friend and colleague from New York, Daniel Perel. And he is I'm not sure, Daniel, of your exact title in the Baha'i international community and the Office of the Baha'is of the United States, but I do know that he's a pillar of that office and upholds all of their programs and activities. And he's also a very key leader in the among the religious NGOs in New York, the Committee of Religious NGOs, and uh, and in that context, he has been a co-founder of the Climate Working Group of the Committee of Religious NGOs, and which for the last year has been, doing very substantive work. And he is a co-chair of that committee and keeps us all on track. So thank you, Daniel. And since we have officially 19 minutes, could you take 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll have open question and answer.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kusumita. And I want to first thank all the previous speakers and those in attendance. I've really learned a lot at this session. And, there's the advantage and the disadvantage to going last. The advantage is that I may not have to say as much because so much has already been said. But the disadvantage is that I want to respond to what everybody said. So I'll do my best to offer a few thoughts on these 3 questions you proposed and then layer on it a veneer of global governance. Which I think is quite important, or environmental governance, which is quite important for this space. I want to start by saying I loved Mona's slip of the tongue. I don't know if you caught it about an hour ago, where she said the United Nations Ethical Program. I thought that was fantastic, and we could even call it the United Nations Ethics and Principles, and then see where that takes us. Rabbi Daniel spoke about love, and I think it's really a very nice framework. And in the Baha'i faith, there's this idea of attractive forces, and these attractive forces that keep everything together, from molecules to galaxies, the weak force, intermolecular forces, and then you have gravity. Love too is an attractive force, and seen in this context, it is also fundamental and necessary for the order of the universe. And this actually may sound irrelevant, but imagine if we loved our governments, and if we felt they loved us. How might policies be made? How might they be implemented? How might they be tested? How might they be modified? What would the interaction be between a citizenry and its government if it felt a loving relationship? And I think that would be really quite different, and maybe it's worth a shot at this moment in history when we have such an adversarial relationship, by and large, between citizens and their governments. So the fundamental principles of the Baha'i faith, I'm sure you're all quite aware, is the oneness of humanity. And seen through that lens, we have to recognize that we have a shared destiny, we have a shared aspiration, and that our goals and our purpose here is actually shared. And therefore, we have to think about our identity as human beings as the primary identity through which we understand our engagement with the world. So whether we're male or female, rich or poor, American or whatever country, Kenyan, it makes no difference. We're all human beings. And if we start our analysis there in our common home, then we can see a distinct outcome will result from this. And this speaks again to the coherence between words and action. And there is also a question about whether or not we will achieve sort of the world that we need to, and this role of hope that faith can provide. And I think we do it through an active choice that we take now, or will it be the result of tragic circumstances that force us to change? I'm hopeful that we can do it as an active choice before those days of tragedy befall us, perhaps yet again. I think another perhaps helpful framing for this conversation would be, at least one thought is about this idea of the Copernican moment. Copernicus realized that the Earth is not the center of the universe, and in fact it revolves around the sun. And it took about a century for the rest of society to catch up with that realization. Well, now we have this notion in governance that governance revolves around the state, and that sort of the global network is a byproduct of it. In fact, multilateralism is based on the principle that member state sovereignty is the fundamental organizing unit. But maybe we need another Copernican moment where we see that it is not the state that is the central actor, but that the port of first call must be our global interdependence. And if that takes place, then how, again, would our laws change? And I actually would posit, I would propose that this would allow us for a higher sovereignty, a richer sovereignty. Just as stoplights allow traffic patterns to flow better, this kind of organization of global governance would allow the states to achieve the greatness that might be theirs in a way that is more coherent and richer, in fact. So these are a few principles. The Baha'i community, we're talking about these programs and initiatives. One of the things that I see in the Baha'i world as it is engaging with the environments around it, social, environmental, climate, what have you, is that the decisions are being taken and action is being taken at the lowest level of decision-making possible. This is a principle of subsidiarity, and it's practiced in Baha'i communities around the world. This is something that previous speakers have spoken to, and I think it's a really important factor when we consider what a global environmental governance would look like. It doesn't look like a global authority telling everybody how to behave, but it's an enabling environment that allows the diversity of needs and aspirations and initiatives to flourish. It's really I see that my time is nearly up. So I have a little timer here to try and help out. So yes, I'll talk about that subsidiarity. What if we trusted our governments and our governments were trustworthy? How would that governance look like? How might we as civil society be wishing to engage and be called upon to engage? How do we ensure coherence in our activities? Have these universal principles with local application? Are our houses of worship built with local materials? Do they host native forests? These are things that we're trying to learn about in order to bring about that coherence. The last thing I'll say is about our organizations individually and in partnership is thinking beyond the constituency, beyond our own silos, whatever they may be, to the universal needs that humanity is facing, aligning principles and practice, and then finally being anxiously concerned with the needs of the age in which we live and applying that to our daily practices. I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I have to say that it's difficult to do last, but that was simply a superb wrap up. Thank you. And your closing point about recognizing the reality, as Dr. Ahmed was also saying with regard to COVID, the reality, the actuality, the concreteness of interdependence should lead us to a commitment to the common good. And now I cannot see, I don't think from where I sit, I can see raised hands. Are the host, Asmara and others, able to see hands being raised from? No, now I do see one. I see only one right now, just a moment. So initials JM. Could you, if you've raised your hand, just go ahead. But I have a request as moderator. Please ask a very pointed question and don't make a long reflective comment because our time is precious. Say which of the presenters or all presenters, and our person with the initials JM, please speak.
That should be Yannicka.
Please go ahead and speak. And if you prefer to type a question, a succinct question in the chat, please do so. Yes.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Jasnica Klara Matic. My association is Equilibrium Global Platform for Peace and Development, and my field of interest is development of consciousness from one side, and other is international environmental law. I want to say in brief something you did not mention today.
Could you please ask a question? Please ask the panelists a question rather than making another reflection. Could you ask a question, a pointed, succinct question? Thank you. Do you have a question? All right.
She's muted, probably.
Yes. I think you are muted. Yes, please ask your question and say which panelist you want to ask a question.
My question is related to perception of reality, which is my field of interest, and I think it is the most important for environmental governance. Because scientists found out that those who are believers and who are not believers have different state of mind and different state of brain, which means one see environment and something which is disconnected from them, including other people, but others, meaning believers, see it as unity. I want to know, I want to ask whether have some researches on that topic, because I think that it is the main issue.
So your question is, do we need research? Is your question about the need for research?
Yes.
Would any of the panelists care to respond to, is there research showing that religious believers see the world as more unified than those who don't adhere to a faith, if I'm rephrasing that correctly? Any comments? I think from the previous panel, one answer would be science actually is a unifying factor rather than a dividing one. Yes.
I would.
Yes. Archbishop Thomas, please.
Yeah. Well, there is this kind of research out. Even so, the question is a little bit about the hen and the egg. Yeah.
Right,
so do people have a different brain and therefore thought on two sides, or does a certain worldview bring forth a certain view of the world? Yeah. I would be a bit hesitant, at least speaking for Christianity. I think that Christianity at large has come back to a unified view, and we would not be here if that would not have been the case. But I would warn a little bit that religions would not be able. I think many religions have proved this in history, that we easily can become part of the party of disconnecting things. Yeah, so I would not say that this is automatic. There's a huge movement, and I'm happy about it. And we would not be here for religions to come back to something that is very specific, the holistic view of life, of Earth, etc. But it's not an automatic given. And if we don't really go for it, if we don't teach our young people about it, I think we also can go the other way. But yes, there is no question that that a very secular technical view can have the consequences that you are perfect in taking things apart.
Yes.
Yeah, this is part of science, and you don't know how to put them together again.
Yeah. So Archbishop Thomas said religion can also divide us. Kekashan would also like to respond to this.
Yeah, I think that, anything can unite or divide us. I mean, we've seen religion divide, but we've also seen religion unite. And just to address the point about research, I think that more so in the Western world, we have the benefit of having academic articles and research that states X amount of things, but there's so much of ground level reality. There are many communities that have been forgotten by the world, and they are the ones who are united by their faiths, who are taking care of their planet. And a lot of them embody traditions that are not mentioned in academic research or in mainstream religion discourse. So I think that is very important to acknowledge as well and look at those ground level realities. And one of the examples I gave was yesterday at one of the Faith for Earth events about how the people of the Sundarbans, regardless of their religion, which, whether they follow Hinduism or Islam or Christianity, their religion tells them to view Mother Nature as, yes, their mother and also as their protector. And that's why they worship a common goddess, Banababi, to protect them from tiger attacks and from disasters. And similarly, you see this in the indigenous practices of New Zealand, of the Amazon in Brazil, and all around the world. But not a lot of this is reflected in research. So I think that is very important to acknowledge and understand that all of these are tools that can be used for division or unity, and it's up to us as human beings to really call.
Thank you, Kekashan. I want to call on two other people with hands raised. And I see a gentleman with a raised hand whose name is blocked from my screen. So could you please speak to us, a gentleman whose name I cannot read?
There's a Junior J. Campbell and a Dr. Aditi Mishal. Which would you like first, Kusumita?
The name I cannot read is not Campbell, but I do see Aditi. So Aditi, why don't you go ahead and make your question very brief?
Thank you, Kusumavaji, for this opportunity. I just wanted to ask if we have centrally got some publications and reports which are revalidating through proper scientific methods the grounded theory that the values um, actually lead to a better environmental action, and particularly supported with cases of faith-based organization taking the environmental action. So that was the question that I had, and it's open for any of the panelists. Take it.
So your question is, what is your question exactly? You're saying that, yeah, you have done the research that shows ethics leads to action.
No, I'm asking if any of the research or a central report is available with us at Faith for Earth, which helps to revalidate the grounded theory of faith leading to environmental action, better environmental action.
Does the work of the Faith for Earth Initiative validate the research that you have done? I think we're in a moment of exploration. And let's call on Junior Campbell. Junior J. Campbell, are you able to?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. This is a question for Dan, based on a comment he made, and I'll add another question after it, related question. The question for Dan: do we need another Copernican moment about governance, or do we need better stewardship of the myriad global governance moments that exist? And Kikishan Basu, it ties in with what she's saying. It's the lack of attention to That's what the question is about: getting the right attention at the right time in the right way to do. Okay, and the other thing, and this is to anyone: do you know the difference between the new covenant as articulated, and perhaps Archbishop Thomas Paul might be best placed to take this initially. The difference between the new covenant as articulated in the Bible and the New Testament.
I'm sorry, but we actually have officially only a minute left, and we don't have time for multiple questions. So I think let Dan answer your first question, and then if each panelist could take 10 seconds to make a final takeaway comment.
Great, thank you so much. I'll try to answer this question and provide a 10-second takeaway because it'll all be in one. I think that the first question we just received about the scientific underpinning is actually quite interesting. And I love that we are in a religious space with faith actors and we're calling for science. I would say also that we can always use the precautionary principle, which speaks very strongly to taking moral action. Regardless of the scientific output, we know it's a good thing. Let's do it. Just like we know the environment needs to be valued, let's value it. We don't need science to tell us to do that, although it will be helpful to have. On that specific question, the Copernican moment didn't actually change night and day. It didn't change the seasons. It just changed the conception of what humanity, of how the Earth circled the sun. And so what I'm saying with this Copernican moment is to change the mental model about what needs to be valued, which is our global interdependence and not the advantage of one state over another. And I think that's sort of what we're looking for. And the answer, in short, is actually yes and. It should be both using the current moments and thinking about new ways that we can reform environmental governance that take into consideration the universality of humankind. Thanks so much, Kusumita.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to call on Rabbi Daniel and Dr. Ahmed in that order to make a final 10-second comment.
Yes, it's been great to be here with everyone. I think we have shared principles of love and solidarity. Let's figure out how we can collaborate in the next few months and help push things towards Stockholm and Cairo, where religions have a greater voice in the political discussions that are guiding the future of our planet.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and then Professor Bote.
Thank you for this significant meeting. My recommendation is actually to the Muslim communities, and I urge them to return to the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah to find a way forward for an ethical world where there's social justice and balance. Thank you.
Wonderful. Professor Bote.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed listening to the different presentations. And I think the array of religions represented here, the faith systems, shows us that there is quite a lot that we can do together. Look forward to working with all of you through Faith for Us.
Thank you so much. And so now I wonder if Kekashan or Archbishop Schirmacher, you have a final 10-second takeaway.
I would just say that it's important for us to regain our common humanity and empathy, and so that together we are really able to create a more equitable world for all, where we coexist with each other and nature.
And Bishop Schirmacher and then Mona.
Yeah, I'm very happy that our topic is governance, because that is more than us telling each other that we want to work together. It means we go for real action together, and that is through governance bound together. And so I think it's not only faith, it's not only values, they have to become reality, and they will not become reality if there is no good governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mona, 10 seconds, and then I'm very happy to see Dr. Abu Mogli on the screen if you would make a final wrap-up reflection for us. Mona, please speak to us for 10 seconds. You're muted, Mona.
Let us continue to walk this road of life, for we are all related. Blessings to each and every one of you.
Thank you. Dr. Iyad, please tell us what you feel we achieved in this panel.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your insightful and inspirational comments and insights. This is very important for us. As Patricia mentioned, we will continue working with you through Faith for Earth initiative. This is very important. We have the head of environmental governance in UNEP with us, which is Professor Patricia. So you have come to the right place, and we will continue to work with you. Hopefully, when we get to UNEP or UNIA 6, we would have together consolidated a position that we can go and discuss with member states how we can integrate the faith, the values, the ethics, the morals, their spiritual responsibilities into environmental governance. So this is very useful, and hopefully the document that will come out of this, and probably the statement, will mention something about our moral responsibility towards nature. So thank you very much, and thank you, Kusumita, for an excellent moderation of this session. Thank you.
Thank you. I think